Could Ayanokoji survive Tomodachi Game? As you can see, it would be an imagining of the scenario that would occur if Ayanokoji got into the Tomodachi Game in the same sequence that Yuuichi did. A little heads up before we start, Ayanokoji gets nerfed just to make it impossible for him to simply cheat all the games through physical means. But he'll still own some of his power, and in addition to that, some of the story details will be changed in order to keep Ayanokoji from leaving. Without further ado, let's begin. Ayanokoji wakes up and his friends soon follow suit. They're in some sort of white and tiled room. Ayanokoji feels oddly familiar with it. Before anyone could ask the important question, a weird cartoon-like mascot suddenly appeared through a hidden door.
You've been invited here to pay back your debts through a series of interesting games,
the mascot said in a cartoonish and rather annoying manner. Ayanokoji soon understood some of the situation, as there had recently been a case of stolen money in the school that was originally supposed to be used for a school trip. Seeing him and his friends were merely school kids, it's very unlikely any of them would amount so much debt that they were required to clear it by such shady means. So this means that one of his friends stole the money, then used it to enter this game to clear their debt, taking everyone down with them. But it wasn't possible to conclude who it was at this stage. Ayanokoji decided to act oblivious for now to try fix this in the safest way possible. As his friends argued with Manabu's unreasonable demands, Ayanokoji calmly told his friends to settle down.
Guys, let's calm down. One of you has a big debt. Doesn't matter who, we must help each other like true friends. Pointing fingers and getting riled up will only cause unnecessary trouble. We can't afford to act that way in such a dangerous place.
His friends were surprised about how much he talked when he was usually a lot more quiet, but his words pierced through the atmosphere and calmed them down.
Oh boy, aren't you such lovely friends? I wonder if that will remain true once you finish this game,
Manabu said in his usual cartoonish manner. Game 1 began. It was a simple game of true or false with Kokuri-san, with a twist that it had a rule where the minority takes priority over the majority. But if everyone unanimously agrees, then the game is cleared. It seemed simple enough. However, talking wasn't allowed, as if you spoke, your individual debt would be doubled. So this meant that there must have been some sort of deception in the game that would require talking to clear up. That's what Ayanokoji was able to deduce for now. The first question was an easy geography question. However, the coin turned to the side, no. Ayanokoji assumed it was possible that Shibe got the question wrong by accident, but the next question simply stated that there were 7 days in the week, and the coin still went to the no side, and Ayanokoji began to suspect something was very wrong. Whoever got them into this isn't after money, they're after revenge on either the whole group or a specific person, though the latter seemed much more plausible. He had to act quickly, but should he risk speaking up and doubling his debt? He had no information to go off right now. Seconds passed and Shibe finished giving his question. It was even more simple. 1 + 1 is 2. Ayanokoji suddenly nodded to Kokorogi with his eyes to look down. His fingers created an X sign. She understood immediately and obeyed without question. The coin went to the yes side.
What?
Manabu applauded surprised. Ayanokoji quickly observed everyone's reactions. Kokorogi was happy, Shiho and Shibe were surprised, but Tenji was slightly annoyed, although he hit it quickly.
Bah, whatever. Next game will be much harder.
Manabu continued. Game 2 begins. It's called Bad Mouth Sugoroku. The layout seems like a normal Sugoroku, but with people being the pieces of the board and the board being an entire rooftop. The goal seems to be purposely making your friends look bad through bad-mouthing them in secret inside a boot, which makes a bunch of viewers vote on who's the worst, eventually pushing them to walk further and further and reach the end before anyone else, ending Game 2 for the other players and letting the unlucky person or persons who end up advancing to fight alone in the third game. The admins had a way to confirm the information most likely. The purpose of this game was obvious to Ayanokoji, and in order to avoid it, they had to abuse the rules. Before they were able to begin, Ayanokoji stopped everyone to talk with them.
I think we should make one thing clear. We don't want any one of us to struggle through the third game alone, especially since if they fail, all of us will retain their debts and will have no way to continue playing more games to clear them. So we must continue on to the third game together. That being said, after the events of the first game, it's likely we have a traitor among us. I won't ask him to step up, All I ask is you put a paper admitting you're the one who brought us to this game and put your name on it. Since the admins know who actually got us here, the 4 of us who lied will be pushed forward until we reach the end of the board, as each of us should be in the front. We'll end up overlapping our positions until we finish the game together in one move, and the traitor will stay behind. Ideally, we can clear our debts in the 3rd game and potentially drop out later. What do you guys think?
A creative and quick tactic. Manabu seemed to be enjoying the scene. Ayanokoji observed once again that Tenji once more showcased an anomaly of a reaction. Ayanokoji directly states, "Tenji, step up. Don't do this to yourself." Tenji collapsed.
Tenji, you can explain later. You have practically admitted your crime. Let us clear this game normally. If no one inserts any bad-mouthing cards, then this game should logically function as a normal Sugoroku. I guarantee you that we will listen to your explanation.
Game 3 began. The 4 hurt, but it was bearable. Even Kokorogi and Shibe didn't seem too hurt. Ayanokoji noticed they were given a lot of food and water to work with for the next 3 days. It must mean that the more players pass the 2nd game due to seeing through the rules, the easier it becomes to clear the 3rd game. The premise of trusting your friends becomes more and more prominent with each game. The game was about to begin. It was a game of hide and seek, another familiar game, but again, it had a twist. They were playing against another team, which also happened to have all 5 of their players. Moreover, each time will only have one hider. Said hider has the ability to end the game for their own team if they feel like they can continue. The other 4 players must seek the hider of the other team as well as sneak food to their own hider. Having all 4 of his friends with him makes this challenge possible. Ayanokoji goes to Tenji and whispers to him, "Tenji, which one of us do you have trouble with?" Tenji hesitated a little before saying, "Shiho." Ayanokoji moved away from Tenji and told Shiho she should be the hider, as she has great endurance and could handle staying for a day or 2 without food or water in case anything bad happened or they needed to get an advantage. Shiho agrees to this and Ayanokoji searches for a good hiding place for her, but he goes alone, not allowing the others to see where she's hiding. However, he tells them to hide in the woods until his back. After they regroup, the other team, called Team K, stares down Ayanokoji's team. Ayanokoji looks to the side at Tenji and asks just loud enough, "I really hope you found a good place to hide Shiho. These guys look very tough." Tenji understood what Ayanokoji was doing and replied that he was sure of his hiding place. The stare down went on for a while. Ayanokoji shared whispers to his teammates. When Team K's members are about to move, Tenji left swiftly and one of the members of Team K, called Barney, follows him. Shibe, Itori, and Ayanokoji follow the 3 other members of Team K. This was all according to Ayanokoji's prediction. He was able to make swift deductions on the other team via their body language and short interactions. He aimed for Kokorogi to follow one of the team members who was very emotional and whom also extremely vulnerable to girls per his reaction to Shiho and Kokorogi. She would eventually trip and cause him to hold back, thus making him hold back from possibly taking food to their hider. Chisato was getting followed by Shibe. Chisato tended to give snarky looks and make slight jabs at people he looked down on. In short, he had a massive ego due to thinking he was the face of the ideal male. Sending Shibe behind him will cause Chisato to shout out all sorts of insults on, causing Shibe to get more rage and not give up on catching up to him. Finally, Ayanokoji himself was following Kei Shinomiya. While the others were busy, Ayanokoji pretended to get more and more tired, eventually halting to catch his breath. As he stood there with a look of fear on his face as he was losing his chance to find Team K's hider, Shinomiya at that moment slowed his movement and started sneaking to the actual direction of their hider's location. As Kei delivered the food and the captain seemed to be delighted, an unexpected sound suddenly emitted from the middle of the forest. Shinomiya was proud for a moment, believing one of his teammates found Shiho, but as he turned around, him and the other captain realized something terrible. Ayanokoji was standing there. He found the captain, and they lost. Having cleared the first 3 games, they pretty much cleared their debts, but Ayanokoji wasn't satisfied and insisted on moving on, as he knew something related to this game was connected to the reason to why Tenji attempted to bring them in. They were released for a day and told to go rest, while tomorrow they'll come back and continue to a higher league called Adult Tomodachi Game. Ayanokoji took this chance to understand Tenji's motives. A Apparently, he fell into grave debt after his two friends betrayed him when he was younger, and he presumed these actions were directly caused by Shiho. Ayanokoji was suspicious of this, as he realized that this company called Tomodachi Game had weird connections with the police to be able to operate so openly without getting into trouble. Ayanokoji planned to get as far as he can in order to meet the highest admin in this game or even the owner himself. He had to get down to the roots of this. He decided to give an excuse to his friends to keep Tenji's secret hidden for his privacy. The next day, the 5 friends arrived at a remote location per ordered. A limousine car arrived, and a lady with a bang covering one of her eyes stepped out. "I assume the 5 of you are ready. Step into the car," she said coldly. Ayanokoji climbed in. It was a very luxurious limousine. He had never ridden anything similar. Yet, when looking outside the window, it triggered an oddly nostalgic feeling for him. The admin lady, whom called herself Tsukino, explained that each of the upcoming games in the adult Tomodachi Game will be a lot more life-threatening with even larger rewards. Ayanokoji wasn't interested in the rewards, and while some of his friends might have been interested, their main goal was to aid Ayanokoji with this investigation. They soon arrived at the destination, but it seemed like a welcoming ceremony for the upcoming games. It's unlikely they'd get this chance to rest soundly, and Ayanokoji was sure that any other competent player would think the same. So he gave Tenji the heads up on this and told him he should split with Kokorogi, and then headed to Shibe and Shiho and told them to go wander around casually and later inform him of the first people that approach either of them. The day passed, and Ayanokoji was informed of what he asked. They were each given rooms to sleep in, and it seemed like the first game would begin tomorrow. As soon as Ayanokoji woke up, he found himself in a different outfit and in a different place. It seemed like a prison ground, and he was wearing the appropriate clothes for it. He was in the first adult Tomodachi Game already. Looking around, he immediately noticed that Shibe was with him, but not Shiho, Tenji, and Kokorogi. Alongside that, he saw there were multiple other players alongside them, some of whom were present in that ceremony, while others seemed to have come from different routes, namely Shinomiya Kei, who he had met. This must mean that Tenji, Kokorogi, and Shiho are playing this game too, but within another group. Ayanokoji had to trust Tenji would be able to handle himself well, as he'd think of a way to clear this game on his own. The rules were explained by Manabu. The setting was a prison, obviously, and all the players had a 20-year sentence, but you could also clear the game by stacking 120,000 dominoes and making them stand upright. Using violence makes you get an additional debt of 100 million yen, as well as losing the game. There are 2 hidden keys. If you find them, you can escape freely and get a bonus of 100 million yen. Every night, players can vote on a player they suspect is trying to escape. If you get over half the votes on you, you're exiled. Once 2 escapees are confirmed, every player left behind gets a debt of 400 million yen. Ayanokoji moved to Shibe and whispered something to him, and immediately entered the room with all the domino boxes. He predicted that there'll be a faction split between the players, as it will allow for more friction between them, which is very much what the admins would want. So he insisted for Shibe to join the other side quickly. Ayanokoji began walking alongside the boxes full of dominoes, and soon enough noticed a small metal glimmer between one of the piles. He had retrieved the first key, and soon after, he heard the players' quiet bantering about the unfairness of the game with Manabu and joined the room as well. The players coordinated for the first day and were able to set down a good amount of dominoes. It was looking good so far. Each side of the players went to their dorms, and after a shower and hot meal, they were able to talk and get to know each other a little, then headed to sleep. The next day, entering the room, all the dominoes had fallen. It seemed that the players weren't going to work together after all. Ayanokoji quickly observed all the reactions of the players, and it seemed one specifically had stood out among the rest. Kei looked calm, but his face hid a glee of happiness that Ayanokoji didn't miss. "I'm sorry guys, it was me," Ayanokoji states. All the players turned to him. Kei told me he had 2 keys and wanted me to collaborate with him in exchange for one. But in reality, I feel guilty about this. Ayanokoji next looked at Kei, who was shook. Ayanokoji knew the key would be with him, as one day wasn't enough to find a consistent place to hide it without the risk of another player finding it or seeing him hide it. Kei was forced to empty his pockets, and indeed, a key dropped out. Ayanokoji picked it up. "I'll keep this safe, but once you're out of the game, we'll all be able to clear this game together. Kei once more didn't even get a chance to counter Ayanokoji, just like his last defeat. The next day began with Kei having been exiled. Since one key was already with Ayanokoji in the perspective of the players, the ones from Kei's side believed that another key would be hidden somewhere in Kei's dorm, but they couldn't find it. The game remained at stalemate, and without anyone being able to make any moves, all the dominoes were stacked and the players were able to clear their debts. They left the prison alongside all the short friendships they created with the other players. The admins took them to another car, and soon they were coupled with Korogi and Tenji, but not Shiho. Apparently, Tenji and Korogi also thought she was with the other group. It seems Tenji wasn't wrong with his thoughts that Shiho was associated with the Tomodachi Game, but he couldn't affirm anything for sure currently. They had to continue into the next game. If Shiho was taken by the administrators, it was unlikely they'd use her for some sort of bargain, and it's likely she has some sort of connection to them. They should get another chance to see her and understand what's happening. The next game was a lot more straightforward. It was called All Bets, and it revolved around gambling. You could sell your teammates for money, and then you'd use that to gamble and gain your money back. You could buy your teammates back, and the goal is to collect excess money to be able to buy supplies and also pay the fee of leaving the cruise ship that the game was taking place on. Though it was obvious that Ayanokoji's team was at a disadvantage due to having only 4 players instead of the max of 5, it could also be thought of from a different perspective, as they'd be able to cut out on some extra fees and supplies. The other 3 teams were already at a table playing some poker, and Ayanokoji's team was soon invited to join. He knew how poker works, but he never played it competitively. He sat down and immediately noticed something about the other team leaders. Right away, he asked for 2 things that tipped off the players that he wasn't clueless. First, he asked for a new deck to be brought and shuffled. Secondly, he asked his friends to stand away from him while watching the game. "It seems you're not a small fry after all," muttered Kaido. Ayanokoji sold himself on the spot to get his value in chips and continued to play the round. He was able to easily read the hidden expressions the team leaders had. While they were professional gamblers as it seemed, they still couldn't hide from his perception. Soon enough, Ayanokoji made just enough money for a few days of food and enough money to pay for the fees. Once he gained that much, he left the game and ignored the other team leaders mocking him for being a coward and not gambling further. Ayanokoji spent all the money they could on food supplies and saved the rest for paying the fees. While he predicted it was possible that saving this money for the next game could be useful, it also wasn't worth the risk of falling into a gambling cycle within this one, as they weren't told if they could use their earnings inside the games. They had special dorms on this cruise ship as well. Ayanokoji warned Tenji, Shibe, and Koroki to not leave unless necessary, as since this game probably has several loopholes, like being able to buy parts of the game to bend it and make playing dirty viable. So they should remain away from the other players to not fall into any elaborate traps. While they remained inside for days, the game kept progressing slowly. But since 1 out of 4 of the teams was inactive, it made things much harder for the remaining 3 to get their desired progress. Ayanokoji's team got offers of alliance and small gambles, but Ayanokoji refused all of them. The other teams got hasty. In the end, Kaido ended up using one of his trump cards, who was his daughter that had a keen intuition that let her win any gamble. Ayanokoji thought it was very unlikely that this player was normal, but regardless of his intentions, he had no interest in investigating it. All bets ended with Ayanokoji's team taking 2nd place, as Kaido's took first and the other 2 went bankrupt by losing to Kaido's daughter. It wasn't the exact outcome he predicted, but it was good nonetheless. The game overall ended with fewer players entering into the next one from the opposing side. They got off the cruise ship and they were announced the next game, which would take place on a small island. Friends Murder Game. This game was a lot more ruthless than any of the first ones yet. Players would wear special collars that send electric shocks depending on the type of paint bullet you get hit with. Zombies are people with huge debts to the Tomodachi Game company, and they chase around players to disable them and get them out of the game by removing their collars or otherwise. Though the zombies also wear their own collars and can get disabled with special bullets as well. Before it was stated, Ayanokoji knew that they wouldn't let players go around at their leeway, so they get scattered around the island randomly. Ayanokoji took the supply backpack and, as he expected, found a map inside. She analyzed the map quickly and found a location on the map that was the easiest to reach from anywhere on the island. He pinpointed multiple of these locations as contingencies, as it only makes sense that a few locations would get marked off the map to keep the players moving. He quickly relayed the location in order of priority and made sure all 3 of his friends memorized it in time before the game truly began. Soon after he finished, Manabu ordered the admins to begin blindfolding the players and taking them to random locations on the island with their cars. Ayanokoji tried to make sense of the movement of the car he was in, and soon after they came to a halt and he was unfolded. He could more or less tell where he was on the map from his sensors through the trip. Just to double check, he used the positioning of the sun to get the cardinal direction aligned and checked his surroundings and was able to pinpoint his rough location on the map. A wide announcement was made through speakers all throughout the island, speaking of black bullets getting dropped at a certain location. While they were special since they could disable fellow players for a few minutes, Ayanokoji wasn't interested in playing that way and directed his attention towards making sure his friends passed this game alongside him. He continued to head to the planned location, trying to keep up a good pace while also making sure to hide from any zombies along the way. It took a few hours, but he reached the location and rested in an area away from the open. A few minutes later, Tenji reached the same place. Ayanokoji signaled to him where he was and continued to rest together. After him, Kokorogi came, and surprisingly, accompanied by several zombies, as if she was controlling them. "Great, it seems they aren't here yet. You guys hide for now," Kokorogi told the zombies as they nodded in understanding. Ayanokoji signaled to Tenji to remain hidden and watch what happens. Kokorogi stood there alone for a few minutes before Shibe strolled alongside as well, though Kokorogi didn't seem to be happy from seeing him. Ayanokoji wasn't able to notice Kokorogi's anger behind her smile. He observed this behavior from her before, but her emotions seemed a lot more uncontrollable this time. She snapped her fingers and the zombies surrounded Shibe. "I hate when you call me that, Shibe," she said with her face unchanged. Ayanokoji quickly came out of his hiding place, revealing himself to the bunch.
Kokorogi, don't try doing something you'd regret. I've always noticed you act very differently from whatever your true nature is, but you don't want to become our enemy.
Kokorogi was surprised by Ayanokoji's appearance and could barely process the situation.
You and Tenji seem to have problems within our group, but these measures of fixing them won't make either of you feel better. Once we finish this game, we'll have all the answers we need, and we'll be able to talk about our true thoughts.
Just like he's done with Tenji before, Ayanokoji's words pierced Kokorogi. He completely understood her intentions without her needing to say anything. Fine, if that's the case, then I'll help as well. Tenji was surprised by how quickly Ayanokoji adapted to the unexpected development from Kokorogi. This wasn't like him at all. It seemed like that playing the Tomodachi game was revealing things about him that none of his friends knew. Ayanokoji with this practically confirmed his win in this challenge, as he'd used Kokorogi's zombies for protection. How or why she got them didn't matter right now, as he was in the best case scenario. He had to play his cards well. Ayanokoji then got an idea to guarantee their chances even more. He told Kokorogi to order her zombies to sabotage another group of 4 zombies. And after a little bit of wondering, they were able to do so. After knocking all 4 out, Ayanokoji told everyone to get into zombie outfits and continue to stick together in this formation. Since per the rules, only 5 players would pass, Ayanokoji allowed Kokorogi to give her zombies a chance to capture other players to release their deaths, as this would also push them closer to victory. After almost a full day, the game finally ended. Things went extremely well. Ayanokoji and his friends all passed, and to their surprise, the 5th winner was a familiar face. It was Shiho. Tenji wasn't pleased by seeing her. Rightfully so. She disappeared randomly and pops up again now, but they were too close to the end to ruin their progress now. Let's go everyone, we'll get our answers soon. Things were nearing their end. They were all taken by separate admins and were given a day to rest in their own rooms. Ayanokoji contemplated the challenges he took so far, and he knew what he had to do for the last game. Not to win, but to give the best possible outcome. The next day, everyone was taken to a lodge in the woods in a snowy place. Ayanokoji observed the players. Everyone was being tense, while most didn't show it. He received a message on his phone. He knew it'd be a task for this game, but he didn't need to check. He had a different idea in mind. He singled out one of the players. Her name was Akira. She was acting in a peculiarly different way than the others. She didn't check her phone for her task once, and she didn't give off any vibes of being worried at all about the game. If his suspicion was correct, everything would fall in place soon enough. He approached her and asked to talk outside in private as the rest of the players got their bearings. Tell him I'm ready to go back, as long as he ends this all. Akira was surprised. This was unexpected. I'll call him right away. Manabe's voice after a short duration suddenly echoed everywhere.
Change of plans, everyone. Leave the lodge. Our admins will accompany you.
This is what that man wanted. Ayanokoji knew so. They arrived at a small stadium not too far from the original lodge, and soon afterwards appeared a man. While everyone else was wearing heavy coats in the snow, he was wearing a normal business suit, and he seemed to be unaffected by the cold. Atsuomi Ayanokoji stood before all the players. Kiyotaka, you conceded, I heard. His voice was more dangerous than the snow that surrounded them. Kiyotaka was unfettered, as he was too familiar with his voice.
I understood everything before the start of the final game. I understood why those things happened to Tenji. I understood how Shiho was connected with the company. I understood Kokorogi's own situation. It was all your doing. You were testing me. You wanted to see how I grew outside that place, how I've changed since.
Atsuomi paused for only a second after listening. It was clear to him that his intellect hadn't been dulled by spending time among so-called failures. Yet, he couldn't help but point out that, despite this, he still hadn't learned anything of real value. Ayanokoji snapped back.
I disagree. I think I did learn a lot about myself and about human relations, which I could never learn from there. However, in the end, I'm a fool, aren't I?
Atsuomi responded again. The remark was direct. Despite everything, he hadn't utilized his powers or realized his true potential. He then finally addressed all the players watching who didn't understand what was happening. You're all free to go. All your debts have been cleared, he stated to them. Kiyotaka heard what he had wished for, and as his friends began to walk away, he followed him. His journey ended, but he was left with an experience that could never be replicated in the place he was heading to. It was almost hard to ignore his friends' pleas and calls for an explanation, but his father's guard stopped them from advancing, and he knew he'd only make things harder for them had he stopped. Many days later, Ayanokoji once again was in a white place. It was a room, everything in it was white, and there wasn't anyone else present with him. 5th generation of the white room is back in working. A mechanical voice echoed through the empty room.